everybody, it's Alexa, and I want to share a quick review of a wonderful book called Save Me the Plums by Ruth Reichl. She is a best-selling food writer, and I remember reading very many years ago one of her other memoirs. This particular story is about her 10 years running Gourmet magazine. It's really a wonderful insight into the world of magazines, which I love because I was a magazine editor for 10 years, but I was not by any means in such a glamorous environment. I was in San Francisco in a trade publishing environment, and she's talking about really the epitome of the magazine editor lifestyle in New York, working for Condé Nast. So you get to learn about a lot of these insider people, behind Vogue and SI Newhouse and the various publishers and all that were involved. And so it's actually quite an entertaining read. Certainly it was a dream job. It was a job that, really she was offered somewhat out of the blue for this type of position. And obviously it was extremely luxurious and important. So it's really just like, any incredibly high profile job for her to have gotten the job of being editor of Gourmet magazine, which is a very old, long-standing gourmet magazine, and then just to do wonderful things with it, which she managed to do for a long time, although eventually the magazine was shut down, like so many magazines are. And there's just wonderful stories in here, like they used to hire great writers like David Foster Wallace, wrote some amazing piece about lobsters that was, in fact, I've never read that piece, I should find it, but it's a very, apparently, very shocking piece about the life of lobsters at a lobster festival. I think it was sort of oriented towards saving animals from a brutal death, and it was daring for them to publish it in a food magazine, right? But the thing that absolutely stands out is her writing about food. And when you read how she writes about food, it's such a unique gift because she will make your mouth water. And she will find ways to describe food that are just poetic, really wonderful and poetic. And she includes recipes, which, in fact, I want to try some of the recipes in here. They are between some of the chapters, and there was one in specific. Jeweled chocolate cake, cocoa powder, bittersweet chocolate, butter, vegetable oil, water, sugar, eggs, flour, baking powder, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of buttermilk. I think perhaps like all good stories, part of it is the wish fulfillment, but then part of it is also the contrast, right? She was a Berkeley hippie, and here she is in Manhattan dealing with famous writers and famous actors and such. And that is, a stunning life that you get to peek into. But there's also some really beautiful elements about her life, and they apply to questions of luxury and minimalism. So I thought that might be a little bit relevant for my channel as well. Her mother was manic depressive, did not cook, was in fact the opposite of a cook, and would serve things that were rancid and really just terrible things. She never knew what to expect when she came home from school. I'd stand outside the apartment door, key in hand, afraid to put it into the lock. Afraid of what was waiting on the other side. I might open it to find the mom who was a ball of energy and sent me off on endless errands that needed to be done right this minute. Or the mom who would wake me in the middle of the night, insisting that I clean the house. During those periods, I'd hear her at midnight, still on the phone, planning parties, typing manuscripts, sending urgent letters to far corners of the world. She'd spin ever more fantastic schemes. This could go on for months. In one of her more manic moments, Mom rearranged our apartment. Why waste space on bedrooms, she cried, rousting Dad and me from our beds so she could send them to Goodwill. If we sleep on pull-out sofas, we can reuse every room to entertain. She threw parties, endless parties. In her manic moments, she made friends with every stranger, so I never got enough sleep. Manic Mom ate nothing, and she went on epic shopping sprees to buy new clothes, new furniture, new birch trees. Eventually, she'd work herself into a grandiose state, where she'd pick fights with all of her friends. Oh, she bought a huge birch tree and had it hauled up into the room, and it took place they were in a small apartment, so this huge tree is taking place of all this stuff in the apartment. Inevitably, the day would come when I'd arrive home from school to creepy quiet. Mom had gone to bed, where she would remain for months, reading the same book over and over. She was particularly fond of Vivian Lee's biography. Eating sweets, unable to rise from the sofa bed, which was now never closed. During one of Mom's more manic episodes, I asked Dad why he put up with it. Instead of replying, Dad went to his desk and returned carrying an old black and white photograph curling at the edges of a boy dressed in tails and a top hat. A huge medieval tapestry hung behind him. I could vaguely make out a unicorn. Me, he said, at about your age. Why are you wearing a costume? It's not a costume. Those are clothes that I wore when my governess took me downstairs to say goodnight to my parents. I grew up with all the things your mother dreams of. Even a boat? I asked. Oh yes, his smile was bitter. My father was the Commodore of the Kaiser's Yacht Club. But I learned when I was very young that things can't make you happy. My parents' Berlin house was cold, and I couldn't wait to escape. All I ever wanted was to work with books, but the family didn't think that was grand enough. That's why I came to America. Dad loved books, loved them so much I'd sometimes enter a room to find him running his hands along the pages of the latest one he designed, as if it were whispering secrets meant for him alone. Oh, Russi. When Dad was serious, his German accent grew more pronounced. I often think that if your mother had work she loved, work that challenged her, she wouldn't want to do so much or do such crazy things. She's just bored and frustrated. It's so sad for her. She's a smart woman who was born at the wrong time. Later in the book, she also mentions an insight that she has on a luxurious trip to France, and she meets this older man. She had first met him in a very fancy restaurant, and now she meets him in a very low-rent place, but that has wonderful, delicious food. She says, "I'm so happy to see you here, but surprised." "Ah," he steepled his hands, "how young you are." He stared at the pot of rice pudding, considering his words. "When you attain my age, you will understand one of life's great secrets. Luxury is best appreciated in small portions. When it becomes routine, it loses its allure." I remember his face and the heady scent of almonds and cherries as he said those words. I remember the musical French voices that surrounded us, and each time I'm grateful to my mysterious friend, for he'd put everything I discovered on this trip into a few simple words. I really recommend this book. It's a nice journey through a world that few of us will have ever experienced or lived through, with wonderful little insights into what it's like to work with creative people on creative projects in publishing in New York and Manhattan, and what the food scene was like, and there's some famous names in there that you'll recognize. I really appreciated this, and I'm definitely going to try some of the recipes. Let me know if you've read any of Ruth Reichel's work and what you think of it, or what you're reading right now. Thanks for watching.